Welcome to the Hidden Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Homer Hargrove. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the times that you ought to be stubborn and other times where you ought to be adaptable and how to discern that as a leader. In this episode, I'm going to give you 3 takeaways at the end to be able to help you directly apply what we talk about today in your own leadership. And every week, most of the time, we come out with a new episode to be able to help you tap into your hidden potential. And we do that by giving you mental and practical tools to be able to do that and apply in your leadership and organization. So let's go ahead and get started. And within this talk, we're going to first unpack what it is to be stubborn and the times we should be stubborn. Then we're going to talk about the times we should be adaptable. And we're going to end by talking about discerning between which times to be what. And the reason that we're talking about this is because being a leader is this constant dance of trying to figure out when you should stand firm and when to adjust your approach. It can be really overwhelming when you weigh in on this responsibility, especially with this pressure of trying to decide what that right move ought to be. And there's these times where we don't want to be this overbearing leader that's so stubborn and never is to where people feel like no, they don't listen to advice. And we also don't want to be this pushover leader to where people are just waiting for a stronger leader to rise up. There's no, what's great about this is that there's no perfect way to do anything, even this, but let's be honest that there's some times where we could look back and realize that we could have handled certain situations better. And that's what leadership is all about, is trying to better oneself as we better the organization that we're a part of. And today we're going to dive in on how to discern when it's best to be steadfast and when it's time to be flexible. And the reason this is important is because knowing when to choose either one can make all the difference. So let's get started with times to be stubborn. The first idea is that you want to be stubborn in your principles. These are kind of like your core beliefs in what makes you a leader and also what makes your organization what it is. And these are things that you don't necessarily want to compromise on. And it shouldn't be this long list of all these things. It should kind of be a narrow list of certain things that you are not willing to move on. As an example, if you're like a part of a church, being biblical is probably a principle that you would hold fast to. It's something that's connected to your integrity. Another principle is like maybe who your audience is and who you're trying to reach. For us, we reach out to an unchurched audience for our church, and in doing that, it changes how we do certain things. For example, just like having an eyebrow ring, it's not that I have this principle about having an eyebrow ring. It's about I have a principle about intentionally being approachable, intentionally trying to reach somebody that is not used to churchianity or even kind of scared of churchianity. And that's a play on words, churchianity. So it's this idea that what I do is not as much as what matters, but the principles that hold them up. Y'all dig what I'm saying? The next part of this that you should be stubborn on is your plans. This is the idea of taking the time to cast vision, feel inspired, and create a plan and sticking to it. I think that one of the most dangerous things to people today when it comes to community, when it comes to leadership, is inconsistency. And I don't know how many times that there's been moments where even just like casually, me and my wife making plans with somebody or people and last minute them canceling. And this is overflowed to all walks of life, right? It's not even just friendly, but leadership as well, within churches, within secular businesses. There's been so many times where people will just cancel last minute, and it's that inconsistency that brings instability to an organization. It brings instability to one's own leadership. So the idea here is that when you make a plan, to stick to that plan. For me and my wife, we rarely cancel. And there's plenty of times where it's things have come up. We got 3 kids. We're exhausted, exasperated, whatever. And it'd be so much easier to cancel and say, hey, can we reschedule? Or I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well. But 9 times out of 10, we will stick through it because it's something to be stubborn about, is sticking to the plans, because it is what brings stability to your leadership and your organization. And finally, that is your product. You want to be stubborn about your product, whatever it is. And that product can be an actual physical product, or it can be more intrinsic or virtuistic. Like, I have actual products that I sell, like my book, and great plug, right? My clothing store and all those things. Those are products that I'm pushing, as well as the message that I have within the talks that I generate within this podcast, within the church messages that I have, and even the sense of community. A big part of our church is really on two pillars, and that is Christ and community. And so those are two products that I'm constantly pushing. And the idea about being stubborn about your product is recognizing that it cannot be watered down products, but that it should be your very best. That this is what you're presenting to other people, and determining what that product is for you should be pivotal, and then understanding how it is that you should be stubborn about it. When it comes to my physical products, like say my book or shirts, I do not make a product or a shirt that I wouldn't wear myself. I want it to. I'm wearing it right now. I love this shirt. It's not just something I pushed out to try to get someone to buy, but I genuinely like this shirt. The book that I wrote is something I genuinely believe in. I'm not just trying to throw up content. It's something that I really believe could be edifying for people. Our church community, that intrinsic product, I truly love being a part of that community. It's the first time I ever felt like I belonged to a community. It's the first time I ever felt accepted at a church. It's something I truly believe in, and it's not just when I invite other people to church. I genuinely 100% believe that they will love this church community. It's not something that I'm making up. And the same goes for, of course, Christ. How sour it would be for me to try to share Christ to somebody else, but not have it myself. So again, it's about being stubborn with this product, whatever it is for you. So those three major things to be stubborn about is your principles, your plans, and your products. Now, let's talk about the times that we need to be adaptable. Being adaptable, let's start off by first your presentation. Now, presentation can mean a lot of different things for you. When it comes to like the idea of Christianity, you might have heard a lot of different pastors say that the message remains the same, but the method is what is able to be adapted. So it's kind of like this idea that the product is what stays the same. The product is what's key, but the method of which presenting that product is able to be adaptable. And so this presentation could be how you present your products, how you present it online or in person. All of these details can change, but even I would say how you present yourself. I'll be honest that my style has changed over the years, and while I like the style that I have, there's been different times where I've changed my style, even just out of intention to be able to be more presentable. So even as like a personal example, so it was a while back to where, as many of y'all know, I go to recovery centers on a weekly basis to minister the gospel, and it's something I've been doing for, it's 3 years this August. And I've been doing it for a long time. And the other day, I'll usually wear, jeans, some nice shoes, and generally like a short sleeve button-up t-shirt, button-up shirt that's untucked. So it's like this, it's casual, but it looks nice. It's a collared shirt, and I always am trimmed, have my hair done, whatever. And this past a while back, there's a time where I was really, pushing my shirts, and I was wearing the shirts. I love the shirts, and so I'm wearing them all the time. And there's a couple weeks where I went to the recovery center, and I was just wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and some like Vans. Usually I'm wearing like some boots. Or I don't know if you'd call them boots, but they're more like dress boots, I guess. Anyway, the essence is that I was much more casual in presentation, and there's like this balance, see, because if I don't want to be so dressed up to where I'm unrelatable, but here I am so dressed down to where I noticed that there was that some of the people were actually being like not like extremely disrespectful, but almost like writing me off disrespectful. To where they were making there's a couple people that made like not a rude comment, but comments that weren't tasteful, and I hadn't necessarily like had that happen before within these groups. So it was kind of weird, and it could have been just like, like this one guy or two, these couple people that were doing that, but I generally didn't have that kind of response from people, and so it was peculiar. And I realized later, man, you know what? I think that a big part of that was how I was presenting myself, and to where I'm not usually too dressed up. I still look nice, but in a casual professional way. But here I was being too dressed down, and my presentation caused my product to not be as well received. And so now I made it just more of a adaptable point to where I adapted how I did things so that my presentation could be more fitting for my product to get across. So again, whether it's something like that, or maybe it's your presentation on your storefront or website, however, whatever it is, just that presentation should be adaptable. Next thing that you should be adaptable about is people. You should adapt to the people that you're trying to reach. I love how Scripture, where Paul says in 1 Corinthians that he becomes all things to all people. When he's talking with the Jews, he acts like a Jew. When he talks with the Gentiles, he acts like a Gentile. And it's this idea that people are above policy. And there's so many times, especially in ministry, to where maybe you have this unique case that is a person in front of you, but it's a peculiar thing to where your policy says, oh, well, they need to stay and wait over here, or they need to wait till after this or after that. And there's just certain moments where it is better for you to be adaptable in the moment to be able to help this person that is in front of you. I like the saying that the most important person within your organization, leadership, or business is the one that's right in front of you. And I found that to be one of the most amazing virtues to hold on to. It requires you to be adaptable to what's going on. But there's been, like, again, personal reference. There's been times where even like in personal ministry, like say even just, I'm referencing the recovery centers a lot, but to where right in the middle of a message, all of a sudden someone breaks down crying, interrupting, and starts kind of like sharing their life story. And policy would say, well, hey, there's a time for that. Let's wait till after the message. We're all here waiting. But rather than doing that, of seeing that person as what's most important, adapting everything else and saying, hey, it's okay, and pausing, slowing down. And maybe it might be like a customer servicing to where maybe a person comes up and maybe they even misunderstand the order. Maybe they misunderstand what happened. And rather than saying, no, sir, you have to email corporate, of just slowing down and saying, how can I help you? How can I make this right? And it's, again, putting people above policy, being adaptable. And the last thing is being adaptable in your procedures. Sometimes, especially as leaders, we have a certain way of doing things, and we box ourselves in to where it has to be done this way. And I think a great example is whenever we're delegating things and things that we used to do. And this is probably one of the biggest obstacles to overcome as a leader when it comes to being adaptable, and that is allowing somebody else to even do the procedures slightly differently, or maybe they put out an output that's only 80% of what you would do. And it's the idea of being adaptable for these procedures, especially when delegating to somebody else, so that they could grow in that area too, rather than you just holding everything in your hands. You need to be able to adapt as needed to be able to be more effective. And navigating those moments is one thing that I like to have in the back of my head, is that, am I doing something that anybody could do, or am I doing something that only I can do? And when I recognize I'm doing just what anyone can do, I try to push that onto somebody else, and so that I can focus on doing on the procedures that only I can do. And there's plenty of times where just even that basic procedure needs to be adapted and changed even if it's different than the way you would do it, maybe there's a better way to do it, and being adaptable. And there's other times where something just happens and you have to change how it is. So being adaptable for for the goal rather than the system that's in place. Now, all that to say, let's talk about how we should discern between these different times. The first question that you should ask yourself is this more about my pride or my integrity? And this is the idea of those moments where you want to kind of cling to that stubbornness. And it's something to just ask yourself, am I wanting to be stubborn in this moment because it's a principled thing that I believe in? It's because of my integrity? Or is it because of my pride? And and when I'm talking about pride, I'm not talking about taking pride in your work. I'm talking about your ego, okay? And one of the most important things that I ever heard from somebody was my dad. And he told me one day that pride can't feed your family. and in the same way, pride doesn't feed our industry, our organization, our team. And so again, ask yourself, is this pride or is it my integrity? The second question is this benefiting the mission or is it benefiting my ego? You know, with all the things that we talked about today, consider for you to determine to be stubborn or adaptable. Something to help you is this question: is being stubborn benefiting to this mission? Is being adaptable benefiting to this mission? Or does it just puff up my ego? Okay, important question. And then finally, is it morally right or wrong? It may sound simple, but it's something that has to be asked. There's been plenty of times, especially within churches, to where they are trying to be adaptable in order to reach more people, but in the process, inadvertently commit a moral wrong according to their belief systems. And vice versa, there's times where people are trying to be stubborn, they're trying to stand on this hill thinking that they're believing in something, but they're really just feeding their ego and they're inadvertently doing something that's morally wrong. Think about the Crusades and the idea of killing for Christ. How ironic, but it's goes into this simple idea: should we have been adaptable or stubborn? Is this morally right or wrong? So again, I hope that all of these different things that we talked about was helpful for you. I hope that it was edifying to your leadership and helps guide you in your own times where you're trying to think, should I be stubborn in this moment or more adaptable? And one way that you could really help me out when it comes to this content that I bring to you every week is by simply going and checking out my new book, Feed My Sheep. It's a 90-day spiritual devotional, but whether it's ordering for yourself or maybe you want to use it as a gift for somebody else, it would really mean a lot to me. And if you maybe you're not interested in the book, you could always just leave a review for this podcast. It makes a difference. It helps it appear in other people's feed. But all that say, until next time, have a great life. Well, there you have it. I hope that this episode was meaningful and edifying for your leadership and your growth within your ministry and organization. Could you do me a favor? Could you leave a rating and review for this podcast? It'd really help me out and help others be able to see this show in their feed. You can also visit homerhargrove.com to be able to learn more, connect, or become one of our supporters. Until next time, have a great life.